Domain 3, culturally responsive practice, has had me thinking lots about myself as a culturally responsive practitioner, and in particular for competency 3, demonstrate cultural responsiveness when working with professionals, parents, families and whānau of learners who are deaf. I thought about what I needed to do in order to ensure that I could demonstrate cultural responsiveness, and I've engaged in quite a few different readings around culturally responsive practice, and the key thing that I identify coming out of those is knowing yourself, knowing your own culture, knowing your values, knowing your cultural biases, and being aware of the impact that those are having on your practice. So I decided to set my goals for this domain, or at least one of my goals, around getting to know myself, getting to know those things that I've just discovered, my values, my culture, my cultural biases. So the first thing I did was I looked at values, exploring values. There was one particular reading that I did that spoke about values and made me think, oh, I'm going to have a think about that. I'm going to look at my values. And to be honest, when I started, I thought that my values don't affect my practice. But as you'll see down here, I've drawn a light bulb because I have to confess that this experience, or this little activity I did, just drawing this mess here on a piece of paper, gave me one of those light bulb moments, and I really wasn't expecting it, and I don't really know where to from here, but I know the things that this activity made me realise. So I'm just going to talk through a bit about what I've got down on my paper here, and go through that. So I'll just turn my video on so that you can see me, and I'll talk you through it. So to think about my reflection on values, I started, I read an article by Mind Tools, which I have referred to in my competency write-up, and that talked through some of the ways to really get in touch with your values and to think about your own cultural biases and understanding. So thinking about my values, I started with my childhood. So I thought about thinking back about my childhood, how I grew up, and what were the things that were really important to us as a family, or what were the things that were instilled in me as being really important in life from my upbringing. And I realised that those the key things that kind of came through with mum and dad and growing up was family. So love, stability, supporting each other, teamwork, working as a group, and a biggie that came in my family was having your needs met and your health needs and care needs met. And whatever happened growing up for myself or my brother, and I knew, or we knew, that that if we needed something health-wise, that we would get that, and that would be seen to. So that's a really big thing that came through in my upbringing. Also, in terms of happiness came from a variety of things. It came from family, but it also came from work. Work was a really key thing in my dad's life, or still is a big thing in my dad's life. Dad was kind of defined by his work life, and so being happy meant also succeeding and being happy in work. And the other thing, so I came up with 3 things. I came up with family, happiness and success. So success, again, when I thought about what I meant by success, there was a lot of different things. So there was financial success, so being financially stable, and having the finances to do the things that you needed and that you wanted. Success in marriage, so finding my love and getting married. Success in education, being successful in what I wanted to do, achieving good marks, going to university, being a leader, getting into a good job and good roles. So there was success really was achievement across the board. So doing your best and being your best at everything that you do. So those, when I thought about my childhood, and that's this section up here, when I thought about my childhood, these were the key ones that really stood out for me. So then I thought about, okay, so those were the values from my childhood, but what impact has this had on me? And I'm moving to the third square across now. And I realised that the impact that it's had on me is that I'm a perfectionist. So that affects me at work, in study, and in my personal life. I feel that I have to do things perfectly. There's no room for failure. There's no room for not being the best or not doing the best. So I like to to do really well, and that sometimes is really hard when something's out of my control. So it's affected me by my need to be a perfectionist. I'm family centered, so my family comes first, and the needs of my family come even before my own needs. And finally, I'm motivated and driven, so I want to succeed in all areas of my life. So once I identified those things, I was kind of thinking, I can see how those values from my childhood have actually impacted on who I am as a person today. And I still was thinking, but they don't affect me in my job. And then I thought about implications for practice, and I thought, how does my being a perfectionist, being family-centered, being motivated and driven impact on my practice? And one thing jumped out at me straight away, that was my value of family-centeredness or family-centered, and as I touched on earlier, as a child, always knowing and having my health and care needs met. And I realised that I find it really difficult to understand when children's needs are not being met by their parents. I really, really struggle with that, and that's something that I possibly triggers me to be a bit judgmental, or to think that parents don't care about their children, and I need to work on that. Also, I get frustrated when others don't meet deadlines, or don't respond to emails, or don't action things at the speed that I feel they should, or that I know they could. And I think that comes from the perfectionist in me, or the person who wants things done perfectly all the time. And that sometimes also I have to be careful in terms of my burning out, because I try to be perfect in everything, I often can take on too much and keep pushing myself. Also, I struggle to understand those who don't strive for success as I see it. So sometimes with some of my families that don't necessarily want to provide certain opportunities for their children, or don't value the same things as I do. So they maybe think, it doesn't matter if my child doesn't do well at this, because I see them being this when they grow up anyway. And that's something that I've encountered with one of my students of the Pacifica culture, is her mum was very focused on her child being good at cleaning and cooking and looking after her baby brothers and sisters, but she didn't put any additional support into the girls' academic abilities, and I really struggled with that. But then working through this activity, I realised that success in education and employment is my value, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's that family's value. And if their values are more predominantly, that family-centered and that nurturing and that upbringing side, and that's what that mum values, then that's probably what that girl values as well. And so, yeah. So this was my light bulb moment. As I said, I don't really know where I will go with this, but what I think is I need to be really aware of these values and how these impact on the way that I interact with others, and the way that I maybe judge others, or the way that I see others, and see those families I work with. And like I thought, oh, my childhood values don't affect the way I do anything. But I think I need to remember that if I feel like that, then it's just an innate thing. It's something that I didn't choose. It's just what's inside me. And so that's the same with my students and my parents that I'm working with, is that they might not necessarily be choosing these things. That's just their values because of what they've been brought up with. Yeah, so the big thing I think that I'm taking away from this is that I need to be careful not to project my values onto others, and not to feel that my values are any more important than theirs. And I think this is a really big step towards being more culturally responsive, is just realizing the values that I have and how they make me think. Yeah, it's been a really something that I thought would be a quick little, I'll draw this up, quick little artifact, think about my values, and it's been much more rewarding than I expected, that's for sure.